thanks everyone for coming in. We've got a great panel here. Really pleased to be talking to these people. I'll do some quick introductions. There are quicker introductions in your booklet. But to the left of me here, we've got Victor Orta, who has had a long career in football at a variety of places, including time being a journalist, a coach, technical director at Sevilla, been at Zenit, been at Elche, head of recruitment at Middlesbrough, and now is director of football at Leeds, which is a heck of a job to be taking on. A very fanatic fan base that really want you to do really well, and obviously your time there has been successful. Next to him, James Cryne, director and co-owner of Barnsley Football Club, a man that's been involved in recruitment specifically and the kind of management around the team for some years now, since his father was originally the owner of the club. Manager hires, recruitment strategy, all these kind of things have fallen under his remit, and he's a pretty smart guy, and great to have him on the panel. And lastly, Will Kuntz, who is the Vice President of Soccer Operations and Assistant GM. Am I right?
That's right.
For Los Angeles Football Club. And has, again, quite a starry history. He's been an MLS Director of Player Relations. Worked for the New York Yankees for some years as Director of Pro Scouting. And is this true? You were the NCAA champion 2003, or is the internet lying to me?
Division 3. So
that's good enough. That's pretty good. Like you're actual.
How many more here in this room? Only one.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you're covering 3 sports here. This is pretty good. You ever win any basketball?
Better viewer than player. Spain is a really good national team.
That's fine. I mean, I got all this information off the internet. I spoke to these guys beforehand, so it was pretty interesting. But I looked at Twitter and, well, there was nothing for any of you. And maybe you have Twitter accounts, maybe they're hidden, but I mean, that tells you a story about football and been working in the industry. You don't want to be too public. But yeah, we're going to be talking about a variety of things, recruitment, challenges, changes, analytics in football, and style of play as well a little bit, because I think all 3 teams that are represented up here today have similar kind of like stylistic tendencies that I think we can look at. Anyway, let's start off. We'll talk about recruitment to start with. I think I'll come to Will first, because I think there's an interesting point here. Like Will was involved in building LAFC from the ground up, so you had to actually essentially start a team and from scratch. And did you start with a coach in mind? I mean, obviously Bob Bradley was an early hire for you. Was that an idea around style of football and style of play?
Yeah, we certainly had our ideas, John Thornton, our president, and myself, ideas about how we'd like to play. And when you start with that, then you very quickly narrow your pool of potential managers to those who are able to fit that style of play. And so Bob, with his international experience, both at the club and national team level, was just an ideal fit. Not to mention, his time in Major League Soccer from its inception through its evolution. So he was perfectly situated to help us in our inaugural season.
Yeah, I mean I think that's important. Like the profiles of the teams that you've been managing are very different. Obviously for Leeds, Victor, recently signing Marcelo Bielsa, which some may have seen as a risk at the time, and then having some success off the back of that. Was that with the increased budget as you went into the Premier League, and realising that you had a specific style of play, is that something that you felt that it was easy to work with? You knew the specific kind of type of play that you were going to enact?
Sorry for my English first, because it's good to say that for have to apologize. Then I am going to say one quote, really surprised. It's really easy work with Marcelo Bielsa. I know that you are expecting the other headline about the legend and the rumors, but it's absolutely not true. Because for me, one of the things that Marcelo is easy to work, he knows proper what a kind of player he wants. He knows what a kind of player he can take performance. He knows what is the style of player that we need. And for me, this is one of the circumstances that even in my career was really clear about the style of football that we are practice and the style of football that Marcelo wants for an individual player in an individual role. Even now, with the StatsBomb, it's relatively easy to create patterns per position in terms of stats, because we know how much, by example, our footballers need to start the action in opposite side and make a recovery in own side. That is absolutely decisive for us, these kind of events during during the process with Marcelo. And then for me, it's really curious how many times now in recruitment department meetings we say, "Oh, what a good player, not for us," and happen a lot of time that, and then we are working in a selective situation, no, in terms of physical demanding, by example, that is absolutely decisive in our recruitment. Then, sorry for don't give the headline, it's really easy working recruitment with Marcelo because we know really clear what kind of players he wants.
So that's very similar to the remit that you've got there, Will. And I think even with you, James, like whereas you two have both worked recently with one coach and one specific idea of like how we can actually build our team and prosper in that way. Now Barnsley is very different in that regard because you have, I think, at least the last 4 or 5 seasons, maybe even more. There's a new coach every year, and you're having to go out there and proactively recruit coaches with an idea of the style of play that you're going to work with.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult at times, I suppose. I mean, we're limited on staff because of budget, I suppose. So we'd always like to kind of have our list of coaches ready to go to replace people when we need them. But it's not always possible. And then with the new GB rules coming in, our lists are getting even shorter. Our options are getting even shorter. But we're always looking for a kind of specific style. But it's not quite as easy as working with the same coach consistently because we've been consistent high pressing, but our in-possession style has kind of varied over time.
You speak of the new GBE rules, which is, I think, very relevant, particularly for you. And Victor obviously has some interaction with that, but probably a much wider pool to select from. But there are players that you signed last season that you simply wouldn't be able to get this season, and similarly from a manager perspective.
It's the same from the manager point of view. I mean, the last 2 coaches we had, well, 3 coaches actually, Daniel Stendal, Gerhard Struber, and Valerian Ishmael, they wouldn't get into the country anymore with the GBE rules. So you can see how it's now difficult for us to replace Valerian when we lose him with someone playing a similar style of football, and then therefore it kind of throws the recruitment off as well, which is limited.
Has it impacted you at all, Victor, these changes in rules at Leeds?
In recruitment of players, clearly, because for me, penalize the creativity. And we are a scouting department that we have like a flag to try recruit with creativity. And then with the new GBA rules, more or less the players are in the showcase. It's difficult. Now it's really difficult to discover anything in football. And I don't like this, I don't like this kind of things. But obviously, it's the number of players is really, really reduced now. In terms of the top 6 in Premier League, normally it's going to the same market. But by example, imagine in my case that with plenty of information of second division in Spain, why a talent of 24 years old in Spain cannot sign in England if really can be relevant for us. And obviously the jump is really high, but the risk in the past was take for the club. And I absolutely agree that we need to put a line, absolutely agree. Even I am really happy that we are in the process. I was in a panel in the Director of Football Association discussing the rules, but I only give this headline. If Haaland is going Molde, never can go direct to Premier League. It happened 5 years ago. And why we need to wait Haaland, Molde, Red Bull, Dortmund, and 100 million? If we discover Haaland, by the way, boring Leeds, can bring direct from Norway League. Then it's a situation that is difficult. What is the first situation? But for me now, with the open, and hope so, because it's a rumor saying that it's not happening more, still open the exemptions panel with under 20. That is a rumor that they are going to finish. That can be, for me, absolutely disaster. And we passed this year one exemption panel with goalkeeper Christopher Claesson from Vålerenga. But again, I know it's difficult to put the line, but how much a talent of 22 years old, I don't know, Hauge, that go to Milan because he play in a lower league like Denmark, cannot play in England direct. We need to go to Milan and then pay the penalty for go to Premier League and pay 10 million more. I don't know. It's a difficult situation that to try back no open regulation. But for me, for protect the talent of England, and we have now, and I am really proud to say that I have 5 players playing in under 20 in England. We get that if we put better challengers in the league. It's the last final of Euro and the last semi-final of World Cup is with these regulations of Premier League. Why? Because Dele Alli fight with the best right back in the world. Because Mason Mount fight with one of the best midfielders in the world. And for me, the protect English football is not only open the door for the numbers, it's open to be the best challengers, to create the best players. If you analyze in another leagues, by example, Russia, when I work, when they included the number of Russia, the level of the national team decreased, consider. Why? Because you decrease the level of the league. And then with the real talent of the English football and the pathway, with the best generation in this moment, and for me, clear favorites to win the World Cup in Qatar 2022 is with this model to put the best in the Premier League and create this challenge for create better English players. Then they talk about protection, and for me, it's the opposite. And we need to try defense that in all the sense. And for me, this is really because, obviously, I cannot say that I prefer England won the World Cup than Spain. It's stupid, I am Spanish. But if I need to choose the second one, I choose the country where I work because it's good for our football these things happen. Then, for me, they try to protect the level of the players, and for me, it's the opposite like they are getting.
It's very kind of you to come out for England. I mean, that's very nice.
I am, to be honest, I am really disappointed because my child that born in Spain in the semi-final was upset in the final cry. He said, "This is a 3 Lion now." It's
This might be the first time somebody from the continent has asked for England to win the World Cup. So that's.
England aren't wildly popular around Europe in general these days, but it's okay. Things can still change. Now, Will, you're listening in on this, and hearing people talking about like these change rules, and you're just thinking like, this is a joke, man. I mean, like my life is 10 times as hard, like trying to recruit into MLS. Like, how can you talk to that compared to these rules?
So it's on some end it's a bit of a champagne problem, I think, to have to be limited to just the best, but the reality is, I think when you look at the global market, so much of it is driven by what happens in England, right? And so we feel it in a very real way in terms of the knock-on effect. And so while we wait for the English market to kind of set the pace, figuring out how the GB rules figure in, then we have to wait and see what happens on the continent, and we are sort of left to pick through what remains. And so, while it doesn't necessarily impact our daily lives, it has a very real knock-on, and we see it sort of maybe a transfer window delayed. So if it's happening in real time here, it'll show up for us in the winter window in MLS.
Would you see this as an opportunity potentially? There could be players that are suddenly like readily available for you that may not have been at all before.
Yeah, there certainly are. It widens the pool. We are still very heavily restricted by our salary budgets and the MLS league rules, which are, I'll say, involved to keep it simple. But yeah, it is certainly an opportunity for us and a chance for us to compete for some players that in the past, Victor would have discovered at a much earlier age. So.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I mean, there's a problem here with younger players, isn't there? For like, if you want to buy the best or acquire the youngest players, the youngest top quality players across, say, Europe, there's now an issue with that. Whereas in the past, you may be able to bring them in, but you're okay with that.
No, now for me, one good point that even Los Angeles was a clear example about that is the MLS is arriving for the South American talent younger. It's not past the times where the all players is going to play there. That was a nice experience from the start. I remember Roberto Donadoni and a lot of players starting with the MLS star. But now, for me, they understood that one thing that is really relevant respect another professional football sports in America, that is the transfer. That is a really good thing that in another sports in America not happen. They say, come on, invest in a good recruitment youth talent for South America. The case, by example, from Almiron direct, for told one example, but I am sure that is happening with Diego Rossi or other examples, that why not Darwin Núñez, that now is in Benfica after Almeria, can make his first steps in MLS to jump to a big club in Europe, no? And they are gaining this credibility with this recruitment. And now it's a lot of Argentina talent going to MLS. When in the past, this Argentina talent is going to Italy. And for me, this is a really good step of MLS, and a lot of credit for them for make this new point of view of the league. And now, for me, it's a league that have relevance and increase its relevance with this kind of signings.
Do you think the potential to gaming the system is probably overstating it, but we're seeing more multi-club models. I know that James's club is part of an ownership group that owns multiple teams across different leagues. Is this now an inevitable consequence of rules like this, that you will see more ownership groups that are buying into different leagues?
Yeah. I mean, I've got a friend over here that was outbid by an affiliate-linked team for a player in Scotland who paid 10 grand a week for a striker that they were after. I think it has to be, because the rules are so restrictive, right? That if you can get around them, you have to try. There's no other way around it. I mean, Victor's right. The problem is it stifles creativity, doesn't it? The rules are built for people that can sign top players from teams that are doing well. That's people with big budgets. They're not built for people that can kind of look for little gaps. But yeah, I mean, we signed a guy in the summer with 28 points who'd never played above third division Germany. Whereas we couldn't sign people that have kind of gone on and sold for 5 million and things like that.
So this sounds like the early rendition of the GBE system is potentially suboptimal. It doesn't feel like it's been really rung through.
It's a bit random. I'll say that. It's a bit random.
Yeah, I mean, there was a Bayern, someone who played for Bayern you spoke of, I think, before.
Yeah. I mean, another one was just when we were looking through coaches in the summer. It's kind of they have to have managed a certain amount of games in a top league or something like that. And I assume there was a structure to the way the leagues were worked, so I was looking for all the leagues, and I found a guy in Serie B who was looking pretty interesting as a coach. And it was only after I kind of put him on the list and analysed everything that he was doing that I checked the document, and Serie B is just not there. It's just not mentioned. Yeah, every other second division of like a top tier league is there.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like it's just been missed off.
Yeah, I think you've got League Bundesliga, second Bundesliga and the Segunda, I think, are all
they're all on there.
The Championship's a couple of tiers up.
Yeah.
And then like Italy doesn't exist. So like,
no, it's gone. Yeah.
Who worked that out? Like,
I don't think anyone worked it out.
This is a clear error.
I think it was just, have we missed anything? And they all said, no, that's fine.
Now, one thing that, again, we're looking at differences here. Like, I think, obviously, Victor's now like comfortable in the Premier League. Yeah, maybe.
Say that we will have one win. The word comfortable, I don't think so.
But this is the point I'm looking towards. Like, you're never entirely comfortable unless you're one of the super large clubs. And I know both you, James and Victor, have found this. Recruiting in different leagues and planning for the future is quite a challenge. Obviously, for Will, there are different challenges there, and we can hit on that in a moment. But how do you find, looking? It's the summer. You know how much money you've got if you stay in the Premier League. How can you react to that?
We know that it's the same when we are in Championship and we lose the semi-finals, and then obviously it's like work in this moment for two clubs in the same time, and it's part of our idea, because at the end the challenge when I start in football, that to be honest, you see me a lot of time in football, still I look young. I don't look really compliment for you when you see me a lot of time working on football now. And no, but it's true that when I start in football in Seville Football Club, our challenge will be the first, be the first to reach the information. I remember, by example, that before of all South American Under-20 is like a friendly tournament in Paraguay with the same national teams, and then we send the scout to this tournament in Paraguay, and I remember it in the past we signed Diego Perotti and Federico Facio, and then when arrived the January tournament, all the people say, oh, really good Federico Facio, late. If Udinese don't sign, because in this moment Udinese signed 25 players on these tournaments, 25, 30, 35. And the Udinese don't sign, we are going to sign in this moment. No, but back to this, for me the challenge now is the information is cheap, is easy, is quick. One player in League One scored with 17 years old, and we can watch in Twitter in 5 minutes later. And the other day, one player of mine with 15 years old gave an assist in a Papa John's trophy and was trending topic in Leeds. Was absolutely incredible. And for me now the challenge is manage this information, is filter this information. It's a challenge in our scouting department, and convert this information in useful knowledge for your club. And then is the challenge that you say, this useful knowledge is stay in Premier League, why not? Dream European competition, or be relegated. Then is for me the situation that you need to have the responsibility to work obviously they have the advantage, the no relegation, that perhaps in a medium term I am going to work in the States, sure.
You'd be too bored with no relegation. It's not exciting.
Look my white. Look my white.
It does pose its own problems, though, doesn't it? Because you have got that situation where, okay, the money's going to come in regardless, but you end up potentially drifting along towards the bottom of the table. And I'm not saying, okay, you're not as successful this season as you were last season. So apologies, I'm not trying to say that, but it's a challenge, like keeping motivations up and planning for the future and understanding what you're going to do when. An end of a season can be less kind of exciting than the hope at the start.
No, without a doubt. I mean, when you consider the MLS playoff structure, and then some teams will say our goal is to qualify for the playoffs, right? And that could mean being the 15th best team in the table, right? And I think if you stepped up to any league, top flight in Europe, and said we want to be the 15th best team, your supporters are going to run you out before the first game.
James, would you take me to 15th this season? Yeah, maybe not say that. We're looking for promotion, always. But yeah, that's a fair point.
But it does make it difficult. In 2019, we won the Supporter Shield, which is the best regular season record, which would be a championship in any European league. We set the league record for points in a single season, and we lost in the semifinals of the playoffs, right? And so when you look at the record, you see that the Seattle Sounders won MLS Cup in 2019, and they are venerated as the best team, right? And I think objectively, to do our job properly, you want to say, okay, we want to be the best team over the 34 or 38 games that we play, and that's how we must measure ourselves. And so, I don't think we would be content to say, well, we finished 9th in the table, but we made the playoffs and then had a playoff run, right? That doesn't necessarily connote with quality. And so that's our big challenge, is making sure that we are always properly self-evaluating, that we understand how well we are doing, and that we are not just looking at, we can make the playoffs and then still compete, right? Which is a very American concept. But we say we're chasing a different rabbit, and so we look at the best teams in Mexico, the best teams in our continental competitions, and those are the ones that we have to compete with, not just for players, but also fan attention. And so it's difficult, and I think the easy tendency in America is to say, well, just qualify for the playoffs, but we sit back always and try and say, okay, what does it take to be at the very best club week in and week out?
Yeah, I mean, I guess you can actually plan relatively in advance, which is a benefit. I know the first time I met James, it was at the end of the 17-18 season, I think it was, and there was a situation where it was like, right, it's going to go right to the wire. It did, and you did end up getting relegated that year, unfortunately. But the planning basically started the planning started before, but the enactment of the plan started on the last day of the season, because then that's defining what's going to happen to you, and it's quite a weird situation, I think. I mean, you can see the benefits of either side, and is there anything you'd like to speak to?
Yeah, well, I mean, playoffs and relegation make football great, don't they? But they make it pretty difficult to run a football team. Is the thing.
To run a business, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And obviously, it's part of our feeling, no? If I have a friend that I remember perfect. We are in World Cup in under-20 in Emirates, and we are in the Burj Al Arab taking a beer, and he told me this was a really important person in football. Imagine football without Saturdays. What a life. But obviously, the Saturdays exist, and the bad mood appear, and when they lose, it's a acid that all destroy. But it's the thing that to enjoying the life when you win too. This is the kind of thing that we are in sports. It's not this easy life.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the tension that people like me who are interested in analytics and such are coming along and spoiling the fun and taking the romance out of it all and all of these kind of things. But we'll move on to a little bit of things about that. I mean, James has been in the game for a long time, but I think, Victor, you've been professionally involved for the longest out of everyone on the panel. When did you first kind of feel that the data and the analytics kind of movement was starting to take hold and actually kind of become a prominent part of the game?
To be honest, in Seville we start really quick in a really horrible Excel documents that I designed, absolutely horrible, and say in front of the most important person of data of the industry. Looks really awful for me, but it was true, because I remember one of my first analytic situation is take the data of all the values of the players in the points that give in the newspaper. For example, if Marca, As give a point, I make a Excel and then create an average. In France with L'Equipe, in Italy with Gazzetta, and then what can I try and make with that? If I am not in the game, because one of my scouts was not in the game, one person is on the game. Welcome journalists. I think the journalists have eyes, like human eyes. I hate when the people said, no, we are professionals in football, and like these classes is stupid, these kind of things. You watch a game and give a paper to 100 people, a journalist, a fan out there, and tell me the 3 best players on the pitch. Appear 4 names, 5 names. We are not really special for working football about that. And then obviously in this moment, I use this kind of stupid tool to try things. And by example, for this stupid tool, appear Kevin Gameiro going to Seville, because we start to monitor, because the average of L'Equipe was always the first, and we create our best 11 with the average of these kind of things, with the points of fantasy football, anything like that. And it was my first approach to the horrible, not really determining good data, but was the first. Then appear the film, Moneyball, Brad Pitt, all the people there. And all the people start to talk in football. Why not in football? Why not in football? And start with a lot of investment, a lot of companies trying to be the first to give to us understood of the football. And then appear in the film, and I think appear in the teams like 2 fights. And I hate this war. I absolutely hate this war. Is the data or the old style? And during a moment, I am feeling that why one or the other? And was for me a transition period that all the people say, no, it's the data, it's the data. No, it's the old style. Like, I don't know, I am going to mention one scout that I love, my friend José Luis Ruda. Now I think he's 60, 62, all scout from Sevilla Football Club that arrive from the games, and only with his face I know if the player is good or is bad. And perhaps he doesn't make a description perfect, but it's the human expertise that for me is absolutely relevant. And then in a moment I discuss with a lot of people, say, why I need to choose? Why I need to choose data or people? Why I need to choose that? And remember a lot of conversations with real experts. No, because they minimize the risk. Yeah, but perhaps José Luis Ruda in Sevilla have an eye that made me a determination because he understood things that perhaps not appear in the data. And then my goal from this time until now and until fighting about that is try to create a mixed model where for me the horizontal thinking is I have 10 scouts and then have a horizontal thinking. And then the data appear like a vertical point of view, not for choose one or the other. It's not for create a own opinion with different source. And this is my challenge now. And I am not going to sign a player for the only for the data, and I am not going to sign a player without review the data. And then it's my way to understand this point. But still, I think we need to improve a lot. And obviously, we are in StatsBomb. I'm a client of StatsBomb. I am nothing too hidden. And for me, it's a company that if I can describe with all the people, and I said to David Álvarez from El País that is here, for me, the good thing about StatsBomb is understood the game from the point of view more integrated. It's not like perhaps other providers that is the number. And for me, StatsBomb is still, and I think because I know a lot of people work in the company with football knowledge, give a point of view really clear for being integrated like a part of the game, not like a isolate numbers that without meaning. And for me, this is one of the things that I like the providers of stats, because they are growing in these kind of things. Not in the past that I remember when I discussed a lot of time ago, I don't want to give the name of the person that say, if I give you the pass like that, is 1, but I give you like that, and my striker score is 1, but this one is more higher than this one. And one person, no, is 1. No, this one is better than this one. And was this kind of discussions that 10 years ago happened. Unfortunately, now we are in another level of interpretation. It's not the data, it's the quality of the data that the StatsBomb determine really well in football.
Yeah, totally. The quality of the analysis counts for a lot. Very nice of you to say good things about us.
20% discount next season.
That was good, yeah, all right.
if I can hop in, I think Victor's hit on something that's really important to understand. And one of the things that was difficult in baseball, and it remains true now in football, is that every scouting report, whether or not a scout wants to think of this, is a data point, right? And you are putting a quantitative number on something. Now it's going to be your own personal subjective measurement, but when we think about scouting reports, those are data points. And so, to maximize the information, you have to treat it as such and then aggregate it. And I think there is a natural tension, many of you in this room will know, is that typically the data-minded side do not have a strong background playing in the game, and some of the more professional scouts or football people you'll meet have a long history of playing. And there is I think, a natural tension there, distrust, but really it comes down to one of the things that Victor said early on, is understanding what club we want to be, what is our playing style, what are our positional profiles, because just like you can hire a scout from anywhere and say, go find me a good player, the more specificity you can build into what you're looking for, the better the return on your investment. And by the same token, I think it applies to data as well. We must know what we're looking for. We must put our data analysts in the best position to give us what we need. And so, that tension is actually, we've found a way to resolve it by saying, why wouldn't you want as much information as possible, right? And if there was a chance that this piece of information could help you with your qualitative scouting report, or a lifelong footballer who's 65 and has seen it all, if his mental database of what a 17-year-old might look like can inform your quantitative ability, I think that's the goal, is to maximize.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I was just thinking there as you were talking, like when you came to football, because obviously you spent time with the M&S office, so like you kind of had not a soft ride into football, but you weren't building a team from day one. But like, was it easy enough to kind of like bring an analytical process into soccer? And was there as much of it as you expected? Was it available that you could kind of drop in day one and say like, okay, we're going to do it this way? Was that normal, easy, or did you have to like kind of push a little?
It's incredibly difficult, and what I'd say is the same fights that we had in baseball 15 years ago, we had in football, over the last 3 or 4 years. And that, I think, is part of it. I had the good fortune of meeting Ted Knutson in London 6 years ago when I was working for the league office, and I had read a lot about Midtjylland and what they had done in the Danish league before that. And so that, I think, helped me build. I had 2 years of talking to Ted and picking his brain, and then when it came time for us in 2017 to figure out how we'd build a club, that was hugely important. But, like I said, every person who's lived in the game for a long time, who played it, thinks that you can't, the game is not played on a computer, it's not played on a spreadsheet. And there is some truth to that, but you have these same barriers that you then need to break down. And I think the key is just, we did something in baseball, and we've done it in football now as well, is if you ask, at any position, if you ask your quantitative analysts to produce a list of your top 10, number 9s, and you ask your coaches to do the same, what you'll find is there's about, on a list of 10 names, you're going to have 7 or 8 names that are common to everybody's list, right? And so it's not as different as you might think, but those 2 or 3 names where there is disagreement, that's actually where you have the most interesting conversation, right? Because why do the analysts prefer these 2 or 3 players? Why do the more qualitative assessors prefer these players? And so it's not quite as different as you think, but it's on the small margins where you get the real valuable meat.
Yeah, I mean, small margins are a big part of what Barnsley have to do. I mean, like, people probably don't realise, but James, you've been actually involved in, like, working with models and scouting and recruitment for, some years, going right the way back to kind of like 2013, 2014 when you first got involved in it. Do you want to speak a little bit about how that came about and, the kind of early challenges of getting that through? Because that was relatively early, I think, in this case. Yeah,
it was probably about 2014, yeah. I mean, it seems obvious now, sat here with all these people, that of course, like, analytics works in football. Of course, you can kind of implement maths and and make a team better. But I remember when we started in 2013, it was more out of necessity because we'd been relegated. We lost 6 million in TV revenue, and we only had 3 players under the age of 24 that played 100 minutes that we could kind of sell.
That's an awful profile for a team.
No, exactly. It was horrendous, and it was kind of like, well, my dad at the time was just funding any shortfalls that we have, and was like, well, we can't keep doing this. We need to do something a little bit different. But I remember when we started implementing this kind of thing, it was like I was very hesitant to do it because I was like, well, what if this isn't the right way to do things? And if it wasn't for my dad kind of ploughing ahead and saying to our manager at the time, look, Barnsley Football Club's never signing another player over the age of 24, which I was like, why are you saying that? That's crazy. But it's turned out to be our success because we don't have to worry too much about relegation because the whole squad is kind of valuable now. Whereas before we had people running low on contracts, they were old, they weren't in demand. Now, if we went down, I think people would be rushing to take our players because they've all got huge potential.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like born of necessity, really, wasn't it? That was the thing. Like, you know, the choices Will made at LAFC were probably more kind of logical and sensible. It's like, of course we're going to do it this way. And, you know, Victor's moved up, you know, well, I guess to the highest level of the football that you've been involved in now. So it's a case of like, right, with a larger budget, you can actually, you know, implement however many scouts as you choose with some degree. Something Will said to me but when we were doing the research for this was everyone has a boss, and this is it. You guys are all extremely kind of you know, important and relevant to your teams and have a degree of power and choice of what you're doing. But everyone still has a boss, so you can only implement things as far as organisationally. They will accept, you know, how you're going to do things, how are you going to recruit, how are you going to implement analytics or scouting or whatever it might be. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, Victor, I mean, with regards to analytics in football, the early days, I imagine there was quite a lot of misuse. There were people that would come along and say, this is my model, believe my model, this is the truth, and you'd say, okay, explain your model. Would you find that, or...?
More times, this kind of approach with the world of football, like say, I know how you get a success. No? And when I start this kind of meeting, say, wow, why you are not buy a football club? Then it's more easy. Don't give me the secret to me, no? And then buy a football club and be billionaire.
It's like the gambler selling tips. You know, why are you betting yourself? Like
buying cheap and selling expensive. No, is a really good way to gain money in football. In a lot of people do really well along the history, you know. Then for me, because at the end we are discussing three really different models, and even Barnsley and Leeds are really close, and it's really two different clubs in a lot of things. It's when we discuss about recruit, it's obviously to minimize risk. No, first of all, minimize the risk, technical, tactical, is work. Is now you can analyze how many minutes in the last 5 years of a player. No, I don't know how many times with the left foot good long passes in the last 3 years. Boom, click, 1 minute. Then minimize the risk in technical, tactical is question of work. Physical, now even with another data tracking videographic like a Skill Corner, gives you a point of view with a lot of patterns about the physical data, even feeling that, again, is work. And then happen the two really challenging football. To never said, I have the definite tool. That is transition. What is transition? I detected a player performing with a coach in your country, north of south, in other country, with a mates, with a coach, and you need to imagine this player making that and putting your team and performing. And then obviously, you can use objective opinions, like it's data, by example, and it's a lot of things about subjective opinions. All the people know that I have a mentor, that for me is the best director of football in the world, that is Monchi, that he was with me 7 years, like a special master's degree in football. And I remember in my position, the head of recruitment with him, when he asked me, Victor, give me a list of number 8 for next season. And then we make a lot of research work, we review all the reports, and we prepare a list with, this is first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Then after 3 weeks that he reviewed all the players, I arrived to the office and he told me, really good list. The first is the best one. And then, and he said, but the third is best for Sevilla. Sorry? Why you told me that? No, the first is the best one, but the third is best for us. And then I understand that more things is difficult to describe. Is if you read, it's sure a lot of people read the book Super Forecasters, no? That is any people that have any sensibility to take decisions, to know, to manage the information for take the decision. And to be honest, Monchi proved that was right, because normally the third was the best for Seville.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Results count for everything. You know, if you sign a succession of bad players, then you're not going to be in your job very long, and that's no one is, and that's the thing, isn't it? So whatever you're doing has to prove and has to work.
And the fourth situation that we need to be surrender, because we talk about people, and we need to be surrender. It's about the psychological analysis of the player. For me, we need to stop to finish that our proper analysis of psychological point of view of the player is decisive in the recruitment. But if the life of one person can change in 1 minute, when all the people talk in the methodology about the fails and success, and I have a lot of fails behind me, a lot of, and I waste a lot of money from a lot of people, and other people gain a lot of money too, but okay. You need to understand the methodology in the fail like a part of the process. By example, here in England, all the people give me a lot of credit, like, wow, what a master stroke, what a good decision, because we sold Pontus Jansson and our decision to bring on loan Ben White, that never played one game in Championship from Brighton, after 2 loans, one in League 2 with Newport County, that is when we start to monitor, one in League 1 with Peterborough. I remember the first action of Ben White in Bristol. We are making a distribution of the ball, and he arrived the ball with his top quality technical, like a central defender, and make a not really good touch, a heavy touch, and it's Famara the dude there. And was question of 1 second that he chipped the ball, make a diagonal, Jack Harrison cross, near to score Patrick Bamford, and 5,000 fans of Leeds United start to clapping. And then the kid made like that, poof, and in his moment he felt that he was the best central defender on the league, and he was this year. But I am not stupid, because in this moment, Famara Diédou touched the ball, and perhaps he made a tackle, red card, score Famara, we lose 1-0, or he make a penalty, and red card, and we lose 1-0, and all the social media start to say, Ben White, what a horrible decision, is Pontus the best, and he's playing in Brentford, or there. All these things is going to change, and obviously perhaps later, I am sure that Ben White prove his quality in another place, but then the psychological point of view, with no intervention in our decisions, we need to be surrendered, because the next time that Ben White touched the ball was in Ellen Road against Nottingham Forest and 35,000 people clapping, he believed and he started to create his own career now with the transfer of 55 million. Obviously the qualities that we detected of Ben White was in Ben White, but more times that we cannot have control, like his psychological point of view, change of life, decisions personal, we need to be surrendered and then know that at the end this is a game. And they are talking about prediction, about predict the future at the other. For me, when you take a decision, you need to analyze the past and be really good to analyze the past. Not try predict the future, because it's not, your frustration is going to increase. And then for me, it's one thing that we need to survive in the fail and in the success, like a part of the process, not like a concept.
Yeah, accountability, I think, and just understanding, what you've done and why you've done it is huge. And I mean, to you, James, do you feel you've learned? How much do you feel you've learned over 6, 7, or 8 years of data players and the thing that you thought was a great idea 7 or 8 years ago? It's like, I'm not doing that again ever. Because
I mean, we still make mistakes all the time. But I think the nice thing with using data is when it's not kind of based on opinion most of the time, you can always go back and say, well, why did we make that error, and how do we avoid making that error again? I mean, that's my dream is that everything is kind of 100% no opinion data. I don't know whether we'll ever get there. I hope we will, but yeah, just to be able to kind of tweak the process and say, yeah, we made a mistake there, but we can fix that, and how do we make sure we don't do that again?
Do you feel that's something you've learned at LAFC? Well, you know, the things that you did early days you wouldn't do now, player-wise and such?
Yeah, I think the nature of, be it the use of data or the use of traditional scouting, it has to be iterative, right? If you're not informed by what's happened in the past, then you have no hope of getting better. You know, to Victor's point, the past is most important because that's how we got here, right? Nobody knows what the future will bring. And, you know, even if a player let's say it's a young player, you know, we've shopped aggressively in Uruguay and Ecuador, and you know, two players look exactly the same, but you know, how are they going to adapt is a hugely important piece, right? And is there a way for us to layer that in on top of you know, our data outputs, whatever they're quantitative or qualitative as they might be? So yeah, certainly every transfer window, you know, we'll do a review afterwards, and we try and inform ourselves, you know, multiple times a year about what we've been doing, what we've tried to do, how successful were we, and we spend as much time looking back as we will looking forward.
All right, thank you very much. I think we're probably over time now, so we're going to have to wind this up. Thanks to Victor, James, and Will, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks.